The following program contains images that may distress some viewers.
All right, we're going to start with the feet and work our way up our bodies, finishing with the neck and shoulders.
The image of Australia's nursing homes might be peaceful and serene, kicking up your heels in God's waiting room.
Circle.
But the brutal reality for many of us is that as we make our final journey, we'll be frailer and sicker than our parents and grandparents before us.
Place your toes on the ground.
170,000 Australians are currently in nursing homes. In 30 years' time, there'll be 2.5 times more. The strain is already showing.
Sometimes you've got to split yourself in lots of different directions, and it's very, very hard on night duty to get anyone to help because we're very low on staff at night. Very low.
Patient care is being compromised.
And the nurse came round and I said, you know, my mum's not well, we need to get a doctor. And her comment to me was, isn't she always like that? That's what she said to me. I said, no, she's not near dying.
The doctor and the nurses there at the emergency room, they said basically, this is definitely wrong, and we're looking at this stage, just by looking at it, that there's maybe an amputation. I said, oh my God, this can't happen.
It's not just the residents who suffer, but all those who love and care for them.
There was a lady in her mum's room one day. They come in and they said, oh, it's smelly in here. And they said, oh, she's soaked. But they left her. They didn't change her.
I can't sleep at night knowing that those things happen.
Tonight on Four Corners, the story of 4 families struggle to find out what happened to their loved ones in nursing homes. The frail elderly are the most vulnerable in our community. We'd all like to believe that the institution set up to look after them can do just that, look after them. But the real picture is often very different. 2 years ago, Eric Novak made the hard decision to put his father Eddie into aged care. Eddie Novak had developed severe dementia and diabetes after a long life lived on 2 continents. Born in Poland in 1919, he survived the Krakow ghetto in World War II and moved to Australia with his young family in 1950.
He was a very good father, a very good caring, looked after me, looked after Mum. He worked hard. He was in a concentration camp. He went through the war. He was a loving man.
At 87 years of age, Eddie Novak could no longer be cared for at home. He took up a place at Redland Residential Care, a nursing home run by the Queensland Department of Health. Over the first year, he slowly declined. Then, on the 6th of October last year, Eddie Novak fell over while trying to get out of his chair in the dining room.
They rang me up the afternoon and they said to me, your dad had a fall. Like, I said, what do you mean a fall? Oh, he fell down, that's the word, he fell. I said, where is he? He's at the hospital at Cleveland.
What happened on that day?
Unknown to his son Eric, another visitor at the nursing home had witnessed his father's accident.
The RN was calling out to him, shut up, Eddie, shut up, Eddie, shut up! And that's the bit that got me shocked. That isn't the sort of words that I expected to hear. What I expected to see after a fall was certainly that sound that still I can hear in my mind, was for him to be patted down for brakes, to be checked. But what shocked me was there were no observations taken. He was rolled over onto his stomach, and both of them grabbed an arm under his arm and his elbow, and they tilted him upright and they marched him back to his seat.
That night, Amber O'Connor lay awake, concerned that Eddie Novak had been injured and not given proper medical attention, and upset at the way he'd been spoken to.
When I woke up the next morning, I said to my husband, I've got to ring someone. I don't know who I've got to ring, but I had to find out. And I rang the CIS, or the Complaints Investigation Scheme.
Eric Novak had never met Amber O'Connor and was unaware there'd been a witness or a complaint. Eddie had fractured his hip, it was discovered later that afternoon. He was admitted to hospital that night. After 2 weeks, he returned to the nursing home and was bedridden for another 6 weeks. This, combined with his diabetes and vascular disease, helped cause terrible ulcers on his legs and feet. Eric Novak wanted to know what was wrong. He asked a nurse.
I says to her, "What's wrong with Dad's legs? Why are they wrapped up?" "Oh, they're just like a bit of a bed sore. There's not nothing much to worry about."
On the 2nd of December, Eddie Novak was again admitted to hospital. His wounds had worsened. Eric was there with his camera.
This one's up here,
Yeah.
the hospital.
Yeah.
By this stage, the ulcers had been necrotic for a month. The wounds stunk. The staff at the nursing home had put tea bags in the dressing to combat the stench. And then there was the shock of the wounds themselves.
This is what they call
That's it,
bed
the
sores.
hospital. Yep.
Yeah. And this is how they started to deteriorate.
Yep.
All that black is just dead skin.
3 case conferences were held to discuss Eddie's worsening condition in November, December and January. Amputation was decided against because of the threat it posed to his life. Eddie's health deteriorated further. On March the 3rd, he died. His son was deeply distressed and has been on a mission ever since to try and understand what happened. Redland Residential Care says Eddie Novak's ulcers were not caused or compounded by any lack of care at the nursing home.
Once he had the fall and he was confined to bed, it became more challenging, and we needed to prevent ulceration like this if we could. We had many mechanisms for that.
What did you do?
Well, air mattresses are probably the mainstay of it. Boots that protect the ankles, and we've got quite a... I can give you a list of the interventions that we used to try to prevent this outcome.
It is possible that Eddie Novak received appropriate care, but Eric is not convinced. Last month, he went to Redland Hospital to get copies of his father's medical records. In spite of holding power of attorney and being executor of his father's will, the hospital would only give him admission and discharge dates.
There it is there.
For the rest, he was told to fill out an FOI application. Why does a family like Eddie Novak's family have to use FOI to get their father's medical records?
We can't freely disperse private information about any individual unless it is deemed to be in the interests either of the person that we're revealing it about or of public interest.
But Mr. Eddie Novak, Eric Novak clearly thinks it's in his interest to see those documents, and you're deciding that it's not.
He is able to apply for FOI, and judgments are made about that. That's not my judgment, but judgments are made.
Having now met Amber O'Connor, Eric Novak called the Complaints Investigation Scheme to find out the result of her complaint. The CIS is the body set up by the Federal Government to investigate all complaints about nursing homes.
We're ringing you back to let you know my dad was at the Redlands Care Centre.
2 weeks ago, he got his answer. The investigator had gone to the nursing home, spoken to staff, looked at Mr Novak's progress notes and a full report. In what will become a familiar theme, the nursing home's paperwork was checked, and because there was no evidence available to support the allegation that staff spoke rudely to Eddie Novak, it was dismissed. Amber O'Connor's eyewitness report was ignored.
The evidence, when it was looked at by the review, accepted that there was no yelling involved.
But nurses are hardly likely to admit that, are they?
We have an accountability in our workplace, and one person in the workplace observes another, and if they observe adverse behaviour, they report it.
Report on each other?
Yes.
And that happens?
Yes.
I trusted people. Like you trust, you know, you trust people. You say, all right, the government pays. They pay. But in your heart, you're saying, well, you can go to sleep peacefully. I know he's getting looked after, and this is the sort of look after I'm getting.
Claire Hughes and Alice Barrett are sisters living in the foothills of New South Wales Blue Mountains. On February the 11th, their 86-year-old mother, Thelma McSpadden, was admitted to Jamison Gardens nursing home in nearby Penrith. The McSpaddens are a huge clan. Thelma has 74 great-grandchildren.
Mum, give us a big smile, come on. Come on.
With such a large brood, life for Thelma McSpadden had been pretty full. But later in life, she became severely depressed, was diabetic and had lung disease. She needed to be given full assistance with a range of basic needs like feeding. It wasn't long before the family started to worry about the care she was receiving at Jamison Gardens.
I think everything was done cheaply. Like there wasn't enough linen. One time she was sick on a Sunday and they had washed her. Well, there was no towels to dry her. They did it with Chuck's cloths. And another time there was all faeces on her sheets, wasn't there, Alice? Yeah, Alice went to put her to bed in the afternoon, and so her bed had been made in the morning, and there was all faeces on the sheets.
I went looking for somebody after I discovered this and couldn't find anybody to complain to, and I actually had to ask one of the cleaners, could she get me a clean sheet? And when she opened the door, I got the last sheet that was in the cupboard.
Within a week of admission, their mother was in decline.
You know, we were saying, she's really having trouble breathing, you know, she's breathless, and do you think, you know, you could have it checked out? And they would sort of, you know, oh, OK, you know, but that would be it. You know,
no follow-up?
No follow-up.
For several days, the sisters asked for a doctor to be called. The nursing home said they were trying, and there would be one there first thing on Saturday morning. At 8 a.m. on Saturday, Claire Hughes drove to Jamison Gardens. She was anxious and expecting to see the doctor.
It took me 15 minutes before I could get her to open her eyes, and I just said, how are you feeling today? And she said, terrible. And you know, I could tell that she was just so sick. You know, that's when I, you know, went looking for staff to get the doctor there, because actually the Friday night before they told us they would have a doctor there first thing for her because she was unwell on the Friday.
Did they get a doctor?
No. And that's what I said, have you got the doctor coming? And they said, no. And I said, well, I want a doctor here now. could you call her doctor now? And she come back in about 10 minutes and said, no, he was unavailable. So then I asked for the ambulance to come.
Hello.
Thelma McSpadden's doctor was Lala Kumar. Following advice from his insurer, he has declined to talk on this program.
Yeah, that would be fine.
But he has told Four Corners emphatically that he was not called by the nursing home on the occasions they claimed. Instead, a fax was sent to his practice late on Friday afternoon asking him to review Thelma McSpadden as soon as possible. Dr Kumar told Four Corners his surgery is always closed on Friday afternoons, and the nursing home knows this well.
And to your knowledge, how many times did the doctor turn up?
He didn't turn up at all when we'd asked them to call him because they would tell us he wasn't available.
But he told you his mobile was on the whole time?
Exactly.
And we actually met him in the car park one day when we were going home, and he had just been to see another patient, and we talked to him about Mum and said how unhappy we were that, you know, we didn't think she was getting looked after, and he said, the care here is no good, get her out.
The ambulance drivers realised the situation was urgent.
Anyway, they listened to her chest, and then the one that was checking her chest said to the other one, you know, come and have a listen to this. And I said, what is it? And they said, pneumonia.
19 days after she went into Jamison Gardens, on Monday the 2nd of March, Thelma McSpadden died of pneumonia at Nepean Hospital. It was at this point the McSpadden clan joined the aged care complaints queue.
We got the letter from aged care. Yeah.
12 days ago, the sisters got the decision.
The details of the breaches are the approved provider failed to recognise that a care recipient's health condition had deteriorated.
The Complaints Investigation Scheme found that Jamison Gardens had not noticed their mother had pneumonia or diabetes and not given her oxygen or adequate fluids. But the CIS accepted the nursing home's assurances that they had tried to contact Thelma McSpadden's doctor. Dr Kumar has told Four Corners he was not called by the CIS. Professor Alan Pearson was a panel chair in the old Aged Care Complaints Resolution Scheme, replaced 2 years ago by the CIS. He has concerns about the current scheme.
Well, it isn't an investigation scheme. It is a scheme that goes in and checks the degree to which the facility is complying with the aged care standards in terms of its systems and processes. They're not going in and investigating the complaint. They're going in and investigating compliance with standards.
They're investigating paperwork?
Yeah.
The approved.
As for the sisters, the decision is cold comfort.
The facility has actually been there for some years, and it makes you wonder, how often has this happened to other people?
That's an answer many people would like to know, but can't, because complaints are not publicly disclosed, nor will they be on the government's new nursing home website.
When a family goes to that website, they can't find out how many complaints have been made against a nursing home. They can't find out the result of those complaints against a nursing home. If you're a minister who says you're committed to transparency and openness, shouldn't they be able to see those things?
Well, this new website will start from the 1st of July and people will be able to access information, particularly in relation to sanctions that may be in place.
But not in relation to complaints or the outcome of those complaints.
There will be some instances where they will be able to see if there has been a breach that has occurred. They can access some of that information.
Last year, Jamison Gardens passed its accreditation audit with flying colours and was last spot checked 3 months before Thelma McSpadden was admitted. Nothing amiss was found. The representatives of Jamison Gardens declined to appear on this program. However, they sent us a statement claiming the CIS investigation was flawed.
We've done lots of OBS
lots of showers this morning, but we've got some weighs to do. Yeah. So we'll weigh Donald, who's at the end of the corridor.
Nurses who choose to work in aged care are some of the most caring of the caring profession. This group of Melbourne nurses are training in how to look after our elderly.
Okay, Donald. Up we go.
Be careful, I'm very frail.
It's all right. We're nurses, we know what we're doing.
But as the typical nursing home resident becomes older and frailer, the nurse's job becomes more demanding.
Beautiful. So, Gabby, if you want to just put the feet pedals down and make sure his feet are up off the ground, so we get a total weight.
Since 1997, there have been no minimum nurse-patient ratios, and the number of registered nurses working in nursing homes has fallen.
So the stable weight, 75.25 kilograms.
Staffing in some nursing homes has reached a critical point, and nurses themselves are starting to speak out. Tanya Dave has worked as a nurse's aide and a manager in aged care.
There are a lot of residents at risk. For example, when it comes to the staffing levels, as the AMA has pointed out. I mean, you've got 120 residents with one RN responsible for them. You're putting those residents at risk.
This directly impacts on care.
For example, when it comes to toileting residents, there are certain practices that have to be in place. For example, the hygiene practices, which are sometimes missed because you're rushing to get things done, like wiping residents down, after they use their bowels.
And that wouldn't get done sometimes?
Because, residents, staff are rushing. When it comes to meal times, you're rushing to meet the allocated time frame. So in that respect, you won't finish feeding the residents.
What it will lead to is residents, pressure areas, breakdowns, wet beds being left. Maybe someone dying and not knowing that they're dead for several hours because the workload's too huge.
Cheryl Dunn has worked as a nurse and a nurse's aide in a number of nursing homes. On average, nurses in aged care earn about 20% less than in public hospitals.
If we're not willing to pay nurses or even enough nurses to care for our elderly, isn't that saying that we don't want to know about our elderly? Let's lock them away and all forget about it? Because to me, if we value them, we would value our nurses and put more people on the floor and give them at least a good pay that would match, like night fill at Woolworths.
Claire Hughes and Alice Barrett believe a lack of nurses directly impacted the care provided to their mother, Thelma McSpadden, at Jamison Gardens.
That's the big thing, not enough nurses. At any one time, whenever you needed a nurse there, you had to walk the corridors looking in every room to find one. They were just non-existent.
In childcare centres, there are ratios of staff to children. Why aren't there ratios in nursing homes of registered nurses to residents?
Well, that's a very important issue that particularly the Australian Nursing Federation has raised with me.
And why aren't there?
Well, we've previously committed to looking at the issue of the staffing mix through our aged care funding review that's underway at the moment. We committed to that previously because I think there is a basis to be looking at the staffing mix in our nursing homes.
3 years ago, Rhonda Button and Craig Eastwood's mother Hilda moved into the Waverley Gardens nursing home east of Melbourne. Like over half of the residents in Australia's nursing homes, their mother had dementia. Waverley Gardens is one of the many nursing homes in the Regis Group, now co-owned by Macquarie Capital.
She couldn't even understand that she couldn't look after herself.
Yes, she still believed she could look after herself. And it mainly affected probably myself and my dad. And we were attacked by her and it was a terrible time. And you didn't want to go and visit, did you?
Very difficult.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hilda Eastwood was prescribed risperidone to relieve the agitation. Such is the short half-life of the drug that it had to be given at exactly the same time every day.
I was in there visiting, and it was actually one of the personal carers that said, "Has your mother had her medication?" And I said, "I don't really know." And anyway, so I questioned the person in charge. "Oh, yes, she's had it." And next thing we know, no, the person in charge is bringing in the medication. She had not. She had not had it. So
Rhonda complained to the CIS that this happened frequently, and she also complained that her mother's dentures were filthy.
anyway, I take her teeth out, and having dentures, under the denture, just food that had been there. You can tell how long the food's been there, and they would smell foul. And that is how I described it to the department.
It was early December, 4 months after her complaint about Waverley Gardens, that Rhonda Button received word of the official outcome of the investigation. Waverley Gardens had been cleared. The complaints had been dismissed.
They replied that there were measures in place that people get their medication on time. And that was obviously, it was Regis's documentation that said there were measures in place.
So the process was they're relying on the paperwork to show that she did it?
Yes, that's exactly right. And the paperwork looks good.
Alan Pearson has looked at the CIS decision, and he believes it's yet another example of investigating paperwork, not the facts.
There was no investigation of whether that event occurred or not. There is simply a report about what the current policies and systems are, and an assumption that, because such policies and systems are in place, this event did not occur, and the complainant is telling a lie.
Well, what kind of investigation scheme is that?
Well, it isn't an investigation scheme.
And the investigation on the teeth was even shoddier.
And what did they do? Did they investigate that complaint?
Their reply to that was, on the day they were there, her dentures looked clean.
Did they take her dentures out?
No, they did not take her dentures out.
How do you know that?
Well, it doesn't say that, but they look clean. And I did actually question the investigating officer on the telephone. Well, did you take them out? Oh, well, no, we didn't. They look clean. I said, well, you can't tell just by looking at them. You cannot tell whether they are clean or not.
But the family's problems with Waverley Gardens continued.
It was a hot day. I think it was the start of the heat wave, the lead up to Black Saturday. There was a couple of days before that was very hot. And I went in there and I found her in a semi-conscious state. She was sitting half upright. She couldn't verbalise anything to me. She was extremely weak. She couldn't even move. She could barely move her head, sort of her eyes. And the nurse came round and I said, my mum's not well, we need to get a doctor. And her comment to me was, isn't she always like that? That's what she said to me. And I said, no, she's not near dying. She's normally coherent. I can't get a word out of her. She's not speaking to me.
Craig Eastwood eventually got his mother into Dandenong Hospital.
They said that she was dehydrated and that she had pneumonia in her left lung, that they could virtually get no reading from her left lung, and her blood pressure was very low, and the likelihood that she would survive was sketchy.
Did they make any comment about how long she must have been in that state?
We asked the question. We just said, would this have happened you know, overnight. You know, could she have got this pneumonia, this dehydration overnight? No, this would have to have happened over a few days at least.
Now, just help me through the gate. It's being your supermarket trolley. Yeah.
Hilda Eastwood spent the next 5 days in hospital. Shortly after discharge, the family found her a bed in another nursing home.
Excellent.
The family have now lodged a second complaint.
Of course, Mum having the dementia, you can't ask her the question. Did you have tea today? What did you have for lunch today? What did you have for breakfast? Did you get this on time? Did you have that? Did they shower you today? Did they brush your teeth today? My mum can't answer those questions. So it's these people, these silent, aged people that can't speak out, that can't look after themselves, that they're the ones that are slipping through the cracks. Yeah.
For people unhappy with a departmental finding on their complaint, there is the Aged Care Commissioner, a statutory body who can review CIS decisions. Last year, the Commissioner found serious deficiencies in the department's investigations. Of the 139 cases that were appealed to her, she found half of them were flawed.
If they're not happy with either how they were treated or the decision that was made, they can appeal to this office.
And in 50% of the cases, you recommend a variation or a set-aside.
Sure.
That looks like you're not happy with the way in which the department is handling those complaints.
I think, certainly we, on examination, on an independent review, we do. On 50% of occasions, we recommend some sort of a change.
So half the time the department's getting it wrong?
On those that come to us.
How can the public be confident that the department is able to conduct a review, a proper investigation, when the Commissioner herself says the department gets it wrong in half the cases?
Well, we do have a very robust system that includes the agency, the Complaints Investigation Scheme and the Aged Care Commissioner. As I've said, initially I've already brought in a whole range of measures in terms of strengthening that system and including last year looking at reviewing the accreditation agency, and I'm also committed to ensuring there's a review of the Complaints Investigation Scheme. This scheme has been in place for 2 years. I think it's very timely that we do have a look at ways to continuously improve upon it.
However, the Minister is not looking at the real flaw in the system, the fact that the Aged Care Commissioner's decisions are unenforceable. The department can, and sometimes does, simply ignore her.
Well, that's the legislation and that's what I have to work with. As I said, I've been on the record. It goes back to this toothless tiger debate that was had right at the beginning.
It makes you sound like a toothless tiger then, in those instances.
I don't feel like it. Well, because those instances are very, they're not the overwhelming example or experience.
For Alan Pearson, the idea that the department has the final word on any complaint is a conflict of interest.
Well, of course it is, because the Commonwealth Government is the funder of aged care. The Commonwealth, the Department of Health and Ageing, with the Minister for Health and Minister for Ageing, are always held to account by the Australian population when things go wrong. So the role of the public service is to avert, as far as is possible, any likelihood of things going wrong. So they are in conflict.
How can you describe the Complaints Investigation Scheme as independent when it's run by the department?
Well, what I'm saying is we have bodies that are independent of one another, and we look at the whole entity of our aged care sector in terms of the accreditation agency, in terms of the CIS, in terms of the Commissioner. We have the 3 separate entities in terms of the regulation and the compliance that occurs.
He was a very good dad. He was a very private person, very proud person, and to see what happened to him at the latter part of his life was very, very painful.
Mark doesn't want us to name or show his father's face to respect his mother's wishes. In 2005, Mark placed his father, a former policeman, into the care of the Sandgate nursing home in Brisbane a Masonic care facility.
Although he wasn't incontinent, because he was paralysed down the left side, he had to wear the pads, and he was told basically just go in bed. And which he did, he didn't like. As I said, he was a very proud man. To do that sort of thing was just beyond belief, but anyway. The reason I contacted the complaints department, if you like, was basically because of what happened with Dad's leg. Down one portion of his thigh, there was a bit of ooze, if you like, bit of muck dribbling down his inside of his leg. And on closer inspection, had a hell of a shock. There's literally a hole the size of a 50-cent piece. Anyway, after being fobbed off, if you like, by the RN at that time, I used my camera phone. I thought I'll sort these people out. I'd take photos of it.
Over the next month, Mark was told his father's wound was healing. But then he got a phone call from the nursing home.
It was night time. Anyway, she rang me and she said, the wound doesn't look good at all. Looks very, very messy, which surprised the hell out of me because we had only just been in to see Dad earlier that day.
Mark got his father to hospital straight away.
And had a look at the wound. Ye gods, it was an absolute mess. At this stage, it was the size of a tennis ball, and well, you could have put a tennis ball into the back of his knee. The back of his knee joint was exposed. The sinews, or the main tendons in the back, was all exposed. Well, the doctor and the nurses there at the emergency room, they said basically, this is definitely wrong, and we're looking at this stage, just by looking at it, that there's maybe an amputation. I said, oh my God, this can't happen.
Mark filed a complaint with the CIS, but the investigators didn't contact him or ask to see his photographs. Instead, they found in the nursing home's favour, saying the home had taken adequate care of the wound.
I had the photographs, I had the complaints, the written documentation. I had all of that. And how the hell do you decide what's wrong and what's right if you don't listen to both sides of the story?
In your initial complaint, in your written complaint, did you say in that letter, I've got more evidence?
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And I said that I was quite welcome to share that with them. But the next thing I got was a letter saying that there was no case to be answered by the nursing home. Everything was kosher.
Mark decided to take the next step. He appealed to the Aged Care Commissioner.
And the appeal was lodged, I suppose, and it came back that, yes, there was definitely a case to answer and all the rest of it.
The Commissioner found that the department had failed to conduct an adequate investigation and that Sandgate Nursing Home failed to provide adequate wound care.
What did you think was going to happen then?
I'm not quite sure what I thought was going to happen.
What happened was that the department rejected the Commissioner's findings and confirmed the Sandgate Nursing Home was not in breach of its responsibilities.
Now, who's right? You as the independent commissioner or the department?
Well, I have my own view.
Well, what is that?
Well, we found, when we investigated the matter, that we didn't think there had been a sufficient investigation.
The Commissioner said that Sandgate did not meet its responsibilities to provide adequate care.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fairly damning statement, isn't it?
If you accept it, and the final authority in this matter did not accept that. And the final authority's views was the same as ours. And I'm quite confident. Under the Act, our responsibilities in a very condensed sense is to provide sufficient numbers of appropriately trained staff or contracted personnel to provide a level of care that the resident might reasonably expect.
The delegate simply says, well, thank you for the comments from the Commissioner, but in light of the investigating officer's report, which they restate, we still confirm the decision to not uphold the complaint. There's no reasoning behind that judgment.
So it's not possible to really understand why the department decided to veto the Commissioner's recommendation?
No.
The Minister describes this as a robust system. What would you describe it as?
I would describe it as a very flawed system.
These older Australians are not yet in nursing homes, but the chances are many of them will be. They'd like to think they could find a place where they'll be well treated, but the evidence is that is not assured.
I have no wish to go into any nursing home with the situation at the present time. I would much prefer to go out in a blaze of glory, an accident, and bang, gone. To go into a nursing home and see what actually happened to my father was absolutely horrendous.
What are your thoughts about ending up in a nursing home?
I know what you've been told. I don't think I know a nurse that wants to.
I hate the thought of it, and I'd hate any of my loved ones to have to go to a nursing home. It would be just something that would, I couldn't do it. I'd just rather find some other way out.
These are people that obviously built society the way it is today, and it's really sad to see that these people, that have a meal in front of them and they're not helped. They're not helped to be fed. There's a meal and it's taken away from them after they're, taken away from it. And I can't sleep at night knowing that those things happen.
3 weeks ago, the Eastwood and Button families visited Hilda in her new nursing home to celebrate Mother's Day.
Happy Mother's Day.
They feel this time their mother will get the care she deserves.
Here we go.
Oh, look.
There we go, fellows.
Placing a spouse or parent into care is one of the most emotionally fraught decisions any of us will need to face.
I'll give you another kiss.
What we need, but don't yet have, is a system where at least we know they're safe.
It's not Mother's Day.
What is it? It was my birthday, though. Have a kiss for birthday and Mother's Day?
All right, fine.
Thanks, both.
You can join reporter Wendy Carlisle and some of the family members featured in tonight's programme by going online to abc.net.au/4corners.
Rolling a sting.
I'm Joe O'Brien.
And I'm Virginia Trioli. Coming out to the lead 2 shot.
Stand by Washington, 30 seconds to your life cross.
Mark, good morning. Sport.
Big shout.
The Rangers started coming down here in Lismore.
Nice gag. It will spread showers.net.au/breakfast. Taking it.
Good to see they can still do burnouts in the wet.
For reframe home fire.
Investigation by the ABC Late Line program.
Sustenance.
Real news in the morning, weekdays from 6 a.m.
The Classic 100 Symphony. ABC Classic FM wants you to decide Australia's favourite symphony, and you can register your vote in 3 ways. You can pick up a voting card at any ABC shop or centre, use the voting card in the June issue of Limelight magazine, and of course you can vote online at abc.net.au/classic. The Classic 100 Symphony. Voting closes June the 30th.
One night, one knife, one life.
Most of the times I feel I wish it was me who had died on that street.
A young Australian locked up in a Bulgarian jail, accused of murder. A father fighting to clear his son.
I think he is a remarkable young man and someone who needs to be fought over and to be got out of this situation. He's someone worth fighting for.
Good Samaritan or hooligan? Can a troubled system decide? An exclusive inside story on Foreign Correspondent tomorrow night at 8 o'clock.
Shut down.
Section D has been suspended pending full investigation.
And set up.
The team is under imminent threat of assassination.
Tonight.
Davy King likes to kill multiple targets. He rounds them up. And then he blows them up.
When it's payback time.
You're going to give me a story that could topple the government.
It's every man.
And this is your revenge, is it, for losing Ross?
And every woman.
Joe's not responding to the emergency signal.
For themselves.
She's on her own.
Spooks.
I don't think I'm a spy anymore.
Tonight, 9:35. ABC 1.
Crime fiction's a bit like love, really. Bit of intrigue, a lot of fantasy, and a great deal of regret.
Good morning, welcome. 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 Good morning, welcome.
Yes, Barry Cassidy's the ABC's new Sunday morning wrapper. Welcome to Media Watch. I'm Jonathan Holmes. Insiders viewers got 29 half welcomes from Barry and missed half a minute of his live programme. Later in the show, poor Malcolm Turnbull was left speechless in Sydney.
So you went into that party room and came out of it with a con?
Well, Penny Wong's just running the lines, as you'd expect it to. Our position is a very sensible one.
The technical term is gold fishing, and it went on for nearly 2 minutes. ABC News tells us that both faults were the result of human error in master control, and nothing to do with the dreaded Ignite computer system. This byline turns out to be an error too.
Art, a key to church.
By Jordan Rados.
Because that story in the Bunbury Herald wasn't by Jordan Rados.
Internationally acclaimed artist Dr. Robert Juniper, on D-Lit, SIT WA, will design the 14 enormous windows of the new Catholic Cathedral in Bunbury.
The entire story, bar about a dozen words, was taken directly from a press release reproduced online by Cath News 10 days earlier. It's by no means the first time for Ms. Rados. Here's a story with her byline from last September.
Doctor shortage worsens in region. By Jordan Rados.
It was mostly lifted from a
media release
issued by the
Division of General Practice, Greater Bunbury.
We know of 6 other examples of media releases recycled under Jordan Rados's byline since then. But Ms. Rados writes plenty of legitimate stories too. She works for 2 weekly papers, the Bunbury Herald and the South Western Times. In the last month, she's written around 7 stories a week. Seems like she's being expected to file too much with too little oversight. Either that, or the paper doesn't care. We asked the Bunbury Herald's editor and the editor-in-chief of West Australian newspapers about company policy with regard to media releases. We got no response from either of them. Mind you, the Bunbury Herald isn't alone. Also in WA, the Bustleton Dunsborough Mail is at it too. Compare Rob Bennett's front page story,
Seagrass to be shifted,
with this.
Minister for Environment. Media statement.
Apart from 2 paragraphs, they're almost identical. The Northern Star in Lismore, New South Wales has gone a step further. Last Monday's paper carried a long story on page 7.
18,000 homes blacked out.
Rain, lightning and gale force winds keep country energy crews working 16-hour shifts around clock.
By Mike Healy.
It was pretty much a straight reprint of this.
Media release.
Country Energy.
And Mike Healy did write it, because he's not a Northern Star journalist, but Country Energy's press officer. Well, at least the paper gave credit where it was due. The Northern Star tells Media Watch that the paper's policy is not to recycle press releases, but that
Our Sunday Chief of Staff, we only have 2 people on Sunday, is new to this position and ignored editorial policy to fill a space at the last minute during a natural disaster.
And that's a large part of the problem. Regional papers provide a vital service around the nation, but they're steadily cutting their journalistic staff. Meanwhile, the media relations army keeps growing. Journalism like this is the all but inevitable result. But a major city paper like the Adelaide Advertiser has no excuse for publishing sheer silliness. When Aussie mum Anise Smole was released after her escapade with a beer mat in Thailand, the Advertiser came up with this.
Her brush with Thai law has highlighted the danger of being ignorant to the laws and customs of foreign countries.
That's what it says, ignorant too. And in a handy box feature, we're warned of some of the weirder laws that lie in wait for innocent Aussie travellers.
Mind how you go.
Indonesia.
The penalty for masturbation is decapitation.
What? They chop your head off? We asked the Indonesian embassy about this heinous punishment. It obligingly responded.
It is totally not true that we imposed decapitation for masturbation penalty.
Oh, that's a relief. But the Tiser warns us to be careful in Thailand too, where it claims
it is illegal to leave your house without wearing underwear.
Our mums always told us to make sure it was clean as well. But the Royal Thai Embassy assures Media Watch
Thailand does not have any such law.
The embassy reckons the Tiser's article
is a case of hearsay and innuendo being presented as fact on the part of the writer.
Well, yes, or more likely, scrapings from the bottom of the internet garbage bin, which nobody at the Tiser bothered to check. Meanwhile, the Courier Mail in Brisbane has been doing some real investigative journalism, fearlessly pursuing the public interest.
MP makes allowance for herself.
Queensland MPs are treating their taxpayer-funded electorate allowances like de facto second pay packets and keeping the cash.
A legitimate issue in itself. But the Courier Mail claimed to have come up with proof that one MP in particular, Labour's Jan Jarrett, the member for Whitsunday, uses her member's allowance for private purposes. How?
The Courier Mail has obtained the bank statements of one senior Labor MP. Ms Jarrett's statements indicate she has transferred amounts of between $1,000 and $3,000 to her husband and gave her son amounts between $200 and $500. She also paid her credit card bill, as well as $2,800 in council rates.
And so on. Jan Jarrett wrote political editor Steve Wardill
refused to discuss the merits of how she used the money.
But not before she'd told him,
I think you will find I am entitled to do what I want with the money.
Which is perfectly true, as the Courier Mail editorialised the same day.
It is important to acknowledge that Ms Jarrett has not broken any law in pocketing these allowances. The Courier Mail, therefore, is not embarking on a witch hunt.
It's not? Well, it certainly sounds like one to me. The paper's been banging on about Ms Jarrett's allowance all week. But it's never asked her one crucial question. Was the bank account whose statements it had acquired funded solely from her member's allowance? We did, and she told us.
The account in question is used mainly, though not exclusively, for paying work expenses. I do use the account for private purposes from time to time, and money is transferred to and from this account when I have a need.
So the fact that money from that account was used for private purposes proves nothing about how she spends her member's allowance. Jan Jarrett has told ABC Radio that, in fact, she spends all of it on tax-deductible electorate expenses.
Look, I can put my hand on my heart and say I've never had to pay tax on my electorate allowance, which indicates that I have always spent those funds appropriately.
But how did the Courier Mail get hold of the private bank statements of a Member of Parliament anyway? Naturally, the Courier Mail's editor declined to tell us.
It's not normal journalistic practice to discuss story sources, so I don't propose to answer your questions.
What questions? Well, last Wednesday, the Courier Mail revealed that as well as her bank statements, it had a copy of a statement made by Jan Jarrett about her so-called electorate account to the Queensland Police
as part of an ongoing case against Ms Jarrett's former electorate officer, who has been accused of misappropriating the allowance money.
Where did that police statement come from? And could the bank statements have come from the same source? Those were the unanswered questions we put to the Courier Mail. So here's another. How legitimate is it to disclose the details of a private bank account, however it was acquired, to allege behaviour which its owner claims didn't occur and would have broken no rules even if it did? The Courier Mail's editor says,
I think the question of how MPs spend an allowance granted for electoral purposes is of great public interest, even if politicians and their apologists don't.
Well, Mr Fagan, you didn't prove how Jan Jarrett spent her allowance. Call me an apologist if you like, but I'd call what your paper did grubby journalism. A lot of people thought this ad was pretty grubby too.
It's pretty quick, I must admit.
Well, this time I'm going to let you off with a warning. If you agree to talk to the doctors at AMI about your premature ejaculation problems, they could really help you.
AMI, the Advanced Medical Institute. It claims to be able to sort out blokes' problems in bed with a miraculous nasal spray. But last week, that ad, featuring a country practice star Brian Wenzel, was taken off air because the Advertising Standards Board found that it was demeaning. The row over the ad had already reminded A Current Affair and the rest of us of AMI's previous problems.
It's not the first time AMI's controversial advertising campaigns have caused a stir. Former TV host Ian Turpie was marched to court after taking part in a deceitful ad claiming he'd suffered sexual problems.
And the weekend before last, the Sydney Morning Herald and the Sun Herald ran a long investigation into AMI's founder, Jack Weissman, and the lack of proof that any of his treatments actually work.
This is patent nonsense.
As the Herald editorialised,
Mr Weissman has claimed his treatments have been approved by the Therapeutic Goods Administration, but the administration itself has not ascertained the quality of any of his products or listed them on its register.
So AMI's in more than the usual strife. But not with Kyle and Jackie O on Sydney's Today FM last Wednesday morning. First, their brekkie show featured a tasteful ad for AMI.
Nasal delivery technology has helped thousands of men like you. The message is clear. Use it or lose it. Call AMI if you want to last longer. A few minutes. Wouldn't that be nice?
And 7 minutes later, up popped Jeremy Jackson. You know Jeremy Jackson. Played Hobie on Baywatch? Well, anyway, Kyle and Jackie O knew all about Jeremy Jackson and the problem he wanted to talk about.
You know, apparently 1 in 2 guys suffer from this problem. Well, the guys between 18 and 45 or something, I think the statistic is.
Yeah, right. That's
it's
quite a lot.
It's a very common problem when you arrive too early in the bedroom.
Yeah,
that's
very good. You've been doing your homework.
I have.
She certainly had. And Jeremy was given 6 minutes to spruik for AMI's miracle cures without a curly question in sight.
It's something that you don't want to have to go through, and more importantly, it's something that you don't have to go through. You know, being embarrassed or ashamed or nervous, or you don't have to. You know, there is a solution to it, and you know, these guys at AMI have an amazing staff of doctors ready to help with multiple treatment options. So
yeah, there is a number you can call.
You know, yeah, we'll give the number out now though. It's 1-800. 1-800. And if you've got a problem with it.
Amazing. Kyle had the number right there at his fingertips.